From the PS1 through the PS2 generation, Medal of Honor was the go-to series for anyone looking for a solid first-person shooter set during World War II. Medal of Honor provided great first-person shooting mechanics while mixing the fantasy of being a soldier or an elite operative for the Allies, along with grounding the gameplay in the very war that inspired this series of games. This series had a great mix of providing authentic experiences that immerse the player in the war, providing the fantasy of being able to partake in operations that would lead to the downfall of the Axis. But with the series as great as this, the foundation needed to be solid to allow for future installments to build off of. The origins of the first Medal of Honor is a story about a developer trying to make their mark on the industry by providing a first-person shooter experience that paid tribute to the heroes of World War II, along with giving the players that fantasy of being an operative for the Allies. While the original Medal of Honor may look dated, the gameplay, music, and historical presentation are timeless elements for this absolute masterpiece of an FPS. Join me as we take a look back at the original Medal of Honor. In 1995, DreamWorks and Microsoft planned on starting a video game company. This joint venture led to the birth of DreamWorks Interactive. One of the controlling members was the film director Steven Spielberg. For a large amount of the studio's life, the developers worked on different Jurassic Park projects along with other video games. In 1998, the studio released a Jurassic Park video game called The Trespasser. This was aiming to be a first-person game with both adventure and shooter elements. The game was received poorly and it did not sell well. This put the studio in a tough situation where they were in need of a commercial hit. At the same time, Steven Spielberg was fascinated by a game his son was playing. This game turned out to be the groundbreaking GoldenEye. Spielberg was busy making his World War II epic, Saving Private Ryan, and wanted to find a way to marry the setting of World War II within a first-person shooter. He was curious if a video game could teach someone about the war through gameplay, and this is where the idea for Medal of Honor was born. Spielberg felt that his film was too violent for kids, but the setting could be used in a video game, more appropriate for younger audiences. He created a basic concept for the game as he wanted it to be a first-person shooter set in the European theater, and have the name of the game be after America's highest military award. Upper management was not sold on the concept. They felt that World War II was not an interesting setting for a video game, and a more sci-fi based game would do a lot better. The developers got together to create a prototype to show management that this could work. Once the prototype was playable, it proved that a first-person shooter within this setting was very fun, and resulted in the buy-in from their own management. This was very satisfying to Spielberg and his team, and especially because a prior effort to make a World War II game was canned by the studio. This early game would have featured capturing the D-Day landings. The story would follow one brother assaulting the beach as the other is a paratrooper. Their management pulled the plug on the game after half a year in development. While the first attempt at a World War II game failed, Medal of Honor was receiving the momentum internally. Medal of Honor was going to respect the Allied soldiers who fought in this conflict, along with combining elements of many historical lessons with entertaining gameplay. The goal was to create a World War II shooter for Sony's new PlayStation. The PlayStation did not have a large amount of first-person shooters, and the studio felt that this was a good opportunity to provide that experience. Medal of Honor would allow players to participate in covert operations for the Allies. The bulk of the gameplay would focus on the shooting. The developers wanted the weapons and their respective sounds to be as authentic as possible. The goal was to not create toys, but rather realistic sound effects for the weapons. When developing the AI, the studio had the goal of creating something cool that would happen each time the player would encounter the enemy. For example, if the player threw a grenade at the enemy would kick it back at you or dive out of the way. This created some reactive AI where shooting them in different places would result in different animations. Shooting an enemy in the head with a helmet would cause it to pop off, and in other situations the enemy may even drop their gun if you shoot them in the hand. While the focus of Medal of Honor would be on the shooting, the developers wanted to provide other avenues for the player to interact with the game world. This is where Spielberg had the idea of sneaking into a German base undercover, and the player would need to show their papers to the soldiers. Military personnel were brought on as consultants for the project to correct the developers' inaccuracies and provide authenticity. This is where some of the presentation came into play for the story. The developers wanted to use real war footage for the cutscenes and provide history lessons of sorts to the players. These videos would help to convey the time period. Towards the end of the project, a disastrous event happened that would have an effect on the game. The Columbine shooting hurt the image of first-person shooters very quickly. At the same time, Medal of Honor had extensive and violent effects from shooting enemy soldiers. The developers wanted to avoid getting needless negative attention, so they opted to remove all blood and gore from the game. Following this, the studio received a letter from the Congressional Medal of Honor Society's president, stating that this game is dishonoring the name of the Medal of Honor and wanted the name of the game to be changed. The development team very much wanted to keep the name of the game, so as a means to show what this project was about, they invited the Society's president to come to the studio and see the game. Here the developers explained what their intent was and showed him their project. After this meeting, the Congressional Medal of Honor Society's president had no issues with it, and took it a step further and vocally endorsed the project. Medal of Honor was aiming to be a game that blended providing an experience that is historically educational, along with being very entertaining. The development of this game is a story about a team with a strong vision and overcoming many obstacles through its formation. The studio won over their own management with an early prototype, proving that the concept could be fun. They found ways to work around the hardware limitations of the PS1, along with being adaptive to outside obstacles that affected the development. This was a studio that was in need of a win, and Medal of Honor turned out to be a home run for them, with it being both a critical and financial success. In October 1999, Medal of Honor was released to the world. At the start of the game, the player is given the first mission briefing, informing them that they are playing as Jimmy Patterson, who has been recruited into the OSS. Following an excellent mission briefing, the player is dropped right into the action. With this being a first-person shooter made for the PS1, do not expect the controls to function like modern-day titles. The left stick moves you forward and back, while it's also used to make you turn left and right. The right stick controls aiming your gun up and down while providing strafing options. This takes a little to get used to and gives an overall stiffness to the movement within the game. The game provides you with other options as well, like an aim button that you can hold down so that you can freely aim at anything you want. The catch is that you need to stand still while you're doing this, but you can peek around cover while holding down the free aim button and holding the shoulder buttons. This allows you to find a good cover spot and then lean left and right to be able to hit your enemies. You can crouch as well to get into smaller areas, along with making you less of a target for your foes. The movement paired with the free aim does take some getting used to, but since the entire game is built around the player's moveset, you will adjust as you keep playing. The stiff movement may feel dated, but the actual shooting, weapon sounds, and action are all still great. Simply put, shooting your guns in Medal of Honor is impactful and satisfying. Depending on where you shoot the enemies, they will react in different ways. If you shoot an enemy in the foot or leg, they will jump up and down on their other leg. Helmets can even be shot off, and they come with a fun ping-like sound. In other situations, enemies will show that they are injured by crawling away or crouching down. They will react by trying to throw you off guard by even going prone. Even the death animations are great to witness, with some enemies continuing to fire as they are falling to the ground. While the game does not have any blood and gore, the many different ways that the enemies can react to your shots is very rewarding. The guns sound like you are firing a deadly weapon rather than toys. Whether it is your weapons or the weapons of your enemies, the shots sound impactful. There's a nice set of different weapons that you get to use. You get to use a variety of machine guns, a shotgun, some rifles, handguns, and more. The different weapons provide you with useful tools for different situations. The rifles are better at giving you some range, while the SMGs are very useful for taking out out many enemies quickly. There are other weapons as well, like stationary guns and your grenades. The stationary gun segments are short but enjoyable. Grenades are useful for taking out many enemies or flushing some out of cover. The AI is pretty reactive when you throw a grenade. They will try to kick it away from you or even pick it back up and throw it right at you. While the potential of almost being killed by my own grenade was not great, I was unexpectedly surprised by how good the AI is in this game. I never got tired of firing my weapons and taking out anyone I came across. Even with this title being several years old, the core shooting is still just as satisfying as it was when it first released. Another aspect that I enjoyed about the shooting is how most of the action is up close and personal with the enemy soldiers. The fighting in Medal of Honor feels more intimate and personal. The 7 missions are broken up into several levels that provide a lot of location and situation variety. Some of the earlier missions feature you going undercover and needing to show your papers to the enemy as you try to sabotage their base. In these missions, you have a silenced weapon to take out enemies without alerting others and stealing their information. It is fun to sneak by in plain sight, but you can also resort to open combat if it doesn't go your way. In these levels, ammo is scarce and it helps to make you feel like you are behind enemy lines, and how you need to make your shots count because you broke your cover. I really appreciated that given the age of this game, it did not restrict you into only playing the missions from a stealthy approach. You are given the freedom to tackle these levels how you want. Firefights in these missions felt intense as every bullet mattered. Other missions featured more open combat levels with lots of enemies to deal with different weapons along with killer dogs. You will fight in different installations, a sub, a winter area, many forests, a hidden base, and a lot more. Most of the objectives consist of you needing to find targets to blow up or retrieve information. Each of the different levels feature different weapons, so when paired with the different objectives and locations, the campaign remains fresh for the entire game. Another thing I liked was how the objectives are not handed to you. In some instances, you need to search for them, but it never became frustrating as you are trying to find that one last objective. The general level design leads you down a path where the enemies are coming from. Some levels do feature alternative paths that you can take in those instances to get a jump on the enemies. Another area that enhances the gameplay is the atmosphere. You get a great taste of this within the first mission. You can hear dogs barking, shouts of soldiers, planes overhead, and explosions. It makes you feel like you are one man in a larger conflict. This sort of stuff helps to sell that your mission is not an isolated incident, but rather an operation that is part of a larger conflict. When everything is coming together for the gameplay, you have an experience that provides the authenticity to the actual war, by immersing the player in this fantasy of being a one soldier against an army. Medal of Honor rides that line between providing authenticity through its presentation and situations, while allowing the player to feel that sense of this game taking place in a real conflict, while giving them the gameplay that leans into that fantasy. It is a perfect balance that doesn't make light of the source material while being rewarding with its gameplay. While Medal of Honor is an FPS masterpiece, there are a few areas that I found to be flaws. There are a few levels towards the end of the game that can be a bit frustrating. One level requires you to fight a lot of enemies with SMGs, and they can do a lot of damage to you in a short period of time, resulting in some annoying deaths. This area can be completed if you take your time and use more cover than you might actually use in the rest of the game. This level becomes a lot easier if you focus on using just the bar as well. Sometimes random gun emplacements feel like they are positioned to trick the player and just have you take accidental damage. Along with this, there are a few levels that feature soldiers with bazookas and they can kill you in one hit. Since the levels do not feature checkpoints, this means you might need to restart the entire area over again. There is a really frustrating section that takes place underground because if a rocket hits a wall near you, you're probably going to die. Besides these speed bumps, the campaign is complete bliss with rewarding shooting.
Good morning, Lieutenant. I'm Colonel Hargrove from the Office of Strategic Services. I'll get right to the point. The OSS was formed 2 years ago by presidential order to serve as the intelligence branch of the United States military. Our mission is anything and everything. Espionage, sabotage, subversion, search and rescue, you name it, we do it. Now, from time to time, we recruit people from outside of the regular ranks, especially if they've got a particular skill we need. Like you, Lieutenant Patterson. What you did last Monday got our attention. I know you consider yourself just another anonymous pilot in the Transport Corps, but taking out a half a dozen of the Wehrmacht and then sneaking back into friendly territory is quite an impressive feat of soldiering by anyone's measure.
When it comes to the story aspect of the game, it has some of the best well-done presentation to provide context for your missions that you'll be in. The real-life war footage mixed with the narration completely sells these cutscenes. Morgan Shepard as the Colonel narrates the mission briefings. His voice is perfect for these parts. He conveys so much with just his voice. He gives you hope, brings you back to reality with how dangerous the missions are, and infuses you with confidence. The narration with the war footage continually prevents this game from ever going too far into fantasy. The descriptions of each of the deadly missions, along with what is at stake, paired with the excellent narration and the well-used war footage, creates a compelling presentation for your mission briefings. Do not go into this game expecting lots of character development, but rather a game that is focused on providing a fantastic first-person shooting experience, paired with a presentation that elevates the game. It's simple and well executed. Medal of Honor is a story about an American studio that wanted to make a first-person shooter set during World War II. The team faced many obstacles during the development, and they overcame all of them to deliver a memorable and wonderful game. Medal of Honor may look dated, but most of the game is a timeless experience. The gameplay and movement may be a bit stiff in some areas, but the gameplay is still solid. The shooting is rewarding with reactive enemies in an authentic setting. The cutscenes inform the player about their mission and are well presented with historical footage to appropriately put the player in the time period. Medal of Honor is a good example of a great achievement for its time, and it stands tall as a timeless classic and a masterpiece of a first-person shooter. If you love first-person shooters and you haven't played this one, I strongly encourage you to play this game. Thank you very much for watching.